Hello, my name is Linda Conheim, and we're going to talk today about some art that's in the North Central Bronx Hospital. It's surprising that if you walk into the hospital, you'll find the lobby, the waiting rooms, the clinics, the day rooms, and the patients' rooms filled with original works of art. They certainly must give pleasure and food for thought to the patients, staff, and visitors to the hospital. But I imagine very few people will stop to wonder how they came to be there. So today we've asked Thomas Messer, director of the Guggenheim Museum, who volunteered his time to be art advisor to this project, to tell us how it came about. How did the project get started, Mr. Messer?
Well, these things always seem to be falling from the skies. I received a telephone call one day in behalf of the Health and Hospital Administration, I guess this is the proper name, in which together with colleagues and other art people, I was asked to serve on an art advisory committee which had the mandate of selecting works of art by commission or by purchase for a number of hospitals.
Yeah, I gather this came from an executive order issued by the mayor.
Yes, I think it was under Mayor Wagner that the original order was issued and supported by Lindsay later on. And it's this old story of enjoining the proper agencies to spend at least one half of a percentage of the total building cost for art and ornamentation of every kind, yes.
So you ended up with the North Central Bronx Hospital as your special project, I gather.
Yes, this developed. We met as a committee of 5 originally, which were then increased to 7. And jointly, we had a number of hospitals to cover. And it was my suggestion, as a matter of fact, in this committee, that we do not tripsy around collectively from one huge project to the other, but that each of us assume responsibility for one project within certain limits, namely major commissions and major purchases would, of course, be submitted by the responsible representatives, but otherwise he would have reasonably free hand to do within the project of his choice or assignment whatever he could.
Are there other projects that have been completed?
Yes, I believe, I'm not quite au courant here, but I believe that 3 out of 5 are completed. I may be wrong on that.
I gather that I think someone mentioned to me a Morrisania Neighborhood Family Care Center is completed.
That surely was. That was a smaller assignment, and I think that was the first to be tackled.
And these are all the first, I gather all the first projects were part of the Health and Hospitals Corporation, although the original mandate was for any public buildings in New York City that might accommodate art, that it might be suitable for. So it's interesting that it is in hospitals.
It is interesting, yes.
And that kind of organization. Well, I gather that I went to see the North Central Bronx Hospital, and it was fascinating. It's an enormous hospital, 17 stories high. There are some 480 works of art in it by over 125 artists. And I wondered if you started with a basic concept with this larger building, how you organized your thinking around it.
Yes, not with a pedantic one, I hope, and not one that was too precise, but nevertheless there was an idea. We visited, of course, the whole committee visited the hospital while it was still under construction during a miserably cold winter day in which the steel helmets that we wore did not protect us against the cold. And the purpose of this was to acquaint ourselves with the site. And my feeling at that time was that the ground floor was best suited for major commissions, and decided then to propose to my colleagues to fill it with major works by artists within the first generation of new American painting, whether abstract expressionist or otherwise, because so few of their work is in public spaces. And I do think that to have placed a Frankenthaler, a Jensen, a Pousset-Dart, and
those are all in the lobby.
Those actually are all in the lobby. There's one more, I think. or no,
Those three in the
are
lobby.
in the lobby, and others are elsewhere. There's a Bolotowski in the dining room and a Bezeman, a very important relief out in the court. But the ground floor seemed to me would lend itself best for major commissions or purchases within an already identifiable stylistic category. And then as we went upward, we went toward more recent styles and younger artists, and of course placed individual works according to space and need.
Well, I gathered like on each floor that there's a day room where all the patients gather, and those had more major works placed in them than the actual patients' rooms, where prints and smaller pieces were.
That's exactly right. Of course, this is an architectural consideration. I didn't even know what a day room was before I started with this, but it seemed that they were larger rooms. They were all in the same space and lent themselves to commissions or purchases by a single artist. So we did add work by a number of people in mural form wherever possible, in some instances covering the ceiling, so that the identity of the artist would be sufficiently strong impressed upon those very suitable spaces. Yes.
Well, did you consider also trying to get, you have a real variety of media and styles with Frankenthaler's tiles and ceramic and the Alan Shields, which is all, as the ceiling piece you were just describing, which is very hard to describe, this very large sculpture by Beserman, and prints and paintings.
Yeah.
Was that really something, or did it just evolve that way?
Well, it was, it evolved, but it was predicated, I suppose, upon the very varied environment that a hospital presents. In a museum, one tends to be uniform in these
Right.
things, because one wishes to make a stylistic statement within a space that is easily controlled. In a hospital, one feels freer in a strange way, and able to not only to adjust to the different purposes, because what is in a doctor's or in a patient's office is not the same
Right.
as what you would put into a hall, but also one feels free from any assumptions that one or the other tendency needs to be illuminated, and one just goes around, has fun, and buys what one believes in, and has a wide range between important and major purchases to admittedly ornamental and decorative items.
Well, this is something that has been occurring to me. Did you have any special considerations, knowing it was a hospital, as to the kind of art, the feeling of the art that you wanted to put in it?
I did not. During our conversations in committee, the question occasionally was raised, is it good for the patient? And I always threw up my hand, because I don't know what's good for the patient,
Right.
except that I have some belief that bad art is not good for anyone, not even for patients, and therefore I tried not to put in bad art. But there were no therapeutic considerations on my part, no.
I think that that's
That's
just
all.
exactly what it should have been, and it certainly doesn't appear that way.
Good.
But it's hard to tell.
I nevertheless hope that nobody will get sicker than they were upon confronting.
There's nothing really very morbid in the way of art. Did the artists that were given commissions select their own spaces, or were the spaces pre-organized?
Well, the spaces existed, and of course the architects had a lot to say about this. The architects were in on the original consideration. The whole space had to be defined, that is, the space for art had to be defined and agreed on, because a hospital, again, is not a museum, and unfortunately has some other purposes besides showing art. For instance, those very large signs and orientational devices had to be taken into consideration, because they tend to conflict with
Well, they certainly
with other-
dominate the
yeah,
hallways.
the so-called graphics, I think they call them. So all of this was worked out to some extent, but afterwards the artist has been approached with the space in mind, and has been asked to adjust the commission to the feasibilities that existed.
So the actual commissions were the Helen Frankenthaler tiles, the Bolotowski,
That's right.
and
The Richard Poussedat was a
Was that a commission?
Yes. Well, I mean, it was a commission of works that he was involved with in his studio, but this, as well as a number of day room
Alice Baber, I think, was
that
a
was
commission.
a commission. You know, these things did not exist, and we said, here is a space.
Make us something
make us
for it.
something, yes.
And I gather that other works were major purchases, like the Bazerman, which...
Yes, the Baserman, the Jensen were purchases, but in this case the situation was in reverse. We had a space in mind. We knew that these things existed, and let's say if it hadn't, we may as well have commissioned it, except in the case of Baserman, who is dead. In the case of Baserman, incidentally, a very major and important monument has been revived, has been taken out of storage and put to public use. It is perhaps his magnum opus, and God knows what would have happened with it had it not been brought to light.
So, well, and also there were, of course, a great many younger artists who were able to be shown in the prints and drawings that were
Yes.
placed in the rooms, which had a very wide selection.
Yes.
Were you conscious, considering the area and that it was in New York City, that very many different ethnic groups are represented throughout the hospital as artists? The artists are.
Yes, we were conscious of that. We were conscious of that. I did not try to balance it out in numbers or whatnot, but everything being equal, we certainly made conscious efforts to include minority artists, yes.
Now, that was another question that had occurred to me, is that did you know when you purchased the smaller items whether it was going into a patient's room or in a clinic area or anything like that, or was the layout, the installation, done after the works were decided upon?
Well, you said at the outset that there were more than 400 works in maybe 7 floors. Obviously, nobody can visualize this exactly. We had a very distinct idea where large and central works would go, and then kept buying more according to field and according to a precisely predetermined layout. In this respect, eventually, Janet Ailing and others have been very helpful in following my very general guidelines and translating those into a very effective installation. I'm very grateful to them.
It certainly is effective. It's wonderful. Well, after seeing these works installed, how do you feel they affect the environment of the hospital? How do you feel about them?
Well, I probably shouldn't be the one to answer this question because one tends to always feel wonderfully about what one does. And so I thought it was marvelous. I think that it relieves the bleakness and the associations
sort
of hospitals with all sorts of anxieties and makes it livable. And I should think that in any state of mind, the presence of works of art, as for that matter, the access to music or so, would be an element that would console and would strengthen one rather than the opposite.
I certainly do think so. I felt that, and I think we have some comments from patients that will appear on this program, which hold up that view.
Well, I'm glad that patient views have been affirmative.
I also wondered, I believe, and I think you do, that this kind of thing, putting art in public buildings, is terribly important. And do you know how the current fiscal problems in the city have affected this? Has the program really been cut off because of it?
I have heard that at a given moment it ground to a halt. I was lucky, I think, to have my project lead off at an early stage where the funds were still available and we could do everything and get done with it, install it, and there it was. Obviously, if the city is in great difficulty, these things will not be easy to do. But I hope very much that under any administration, the initiative that was established by an earlier directive of Mayor of the City of New York will be adhere to, because it's a basic attitude that any self-respecting city
should have and
yes,
should be doing.
Yes, I do. And of course, it is important not only for the recipient, but also for the creator. We did spend amounts of money which, while small in relation to building costs, are significant for those who are thereby supported. And for an artist to sell his work for a good and public purpose and be supported in the only way that really counts, namely through cash, is a very important and very desired.
So I imagine artists would feel very good about being permanently in public places where their work can be seen. It gives them reasons to.
I should think it would be excellent, which brings me to a point which concerned us a great deal, namely the security of the works. In a museum, again, you have controls that a hospital cannot easily afford because it has other purposes. And the question may arise, why are so many things behind plexiglass and fastened to the wall, and wouldn't it be nicer to have access to the surface and so on? All of this is true, but at a given point we have to make sure that what is there will remain there and that we are not just risking wholesale destruction.
Well, I think that we can hope that this kind of program will continue in the future when New York City gets back on its feet. And I thank you very much.
Well, thank you for giving me a chance to say these things, and I wholeheartedly second your hopes.